Okay, so let's go forward a little bit. Deuteronomy 33:2. This is where it comes from. At his right hand there was flashing light for them. This is the description of what's happening with this whole process, right? And the rabbis look at that word, at the two words, eshidat, and ask, what is that all about? And they translated it, white fire. So reading those two words as fire plus command means that God is writing his own character into the text in the spaces that can't be read. And that got developed by Sifrei Davarim in the Midrashic literature, which teaches that the words of Torah are compared to fire. The comparison to fire is, of course, fire is warming, fire is necessary for life, but it can also sear you and kill you. So the space where God is both nurturing and dangerous, right? Right in the Torah is the care of God and the fear of God, written into a space that you can't read, but you can feel. You can go into that space as you're reading along and feel what's happening there. Okay? So, to study Torah is to view yourself as standing in the midst of fire. Right? It's both dangerous and necessary. And of course, that kind of tension is why I need the white spaces to remind me that God's presence is there. Yes, question.
Is that like Selah?
Is like what?
Selah? In the Psalms?
Selah is a musical, as far as I know, is a musical annotation that said there's a kind of break here or something, right? No. But in the Psalms, you will find the same thing, which is really interesting, right? Because as David's writing about all this emotional stuff that's going on in his life, you will find empty spaces. In fact, you will find empty spaces throughout the Torah. And in the past, you just skipped through them because it was just an empty space. There was nothing there. But in fact, what's really there in the nothing is God. Right? God was there when there was nothing else. And he's still there in the nothing. And in fact, when he took the children of Israel into the wilderness, he took them into the nothing, so that they could experience him, right? And he built the same kind of hints into the Tanakh. Wow, that's really cool. Yes, Tanya. So you have a spiritual experience from something that you've heard or something that you've seen, a sign, a word, a song, whatever, okay? No, that's not what I'm talking about. That's real, but you're talking about a communication that you can understand, right? Because a sign you see, you interpret it. A word you hear, you interpret it, right? Okay? This is, I don't have the right... okay, maybe this will do it. Okay, let's see what we got here. Yes, perfect. Okay, what does this mean? Do you see what I'm saying? What does this mean? It doesn't mean anything because there's nothing there for me to interpret. The beautiful part about the spaces in the Torah is that they're not there for me to interpret. They're there for me to enter into the emptiness and find God, however I find him. It's not rash. Remember, it's not rational communication. It's like when you walk into a room and you just feel like there's somebody there, right? I mean, there might be, but you didn't turn to look, and then you just sense that there's somebody in the room, okay? That's what has to happen here. God wants you to sense his presence. Not to be able to rationalize it or to justify it, but to just come to a place in the Torah where all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, God's asking me to stop here and just sense what's happening, Okay? I might not even be able to articulate it because that would convert it into black letters. But I have this feeling about it. Okay? So, the rabbis say that reading Torah is like that. It's like standing in fire so that you're sensing things, not just interpreting them. So the study of Torah is viewed as a man who is standing in a necessary, dangerous place. It can burn you to death, or it can be the comforting warmth that you need, right? Both things are present. Now, Rabbi Simon ben Lakish in the mid-3rd century, the Torah that the Holy One, blessed be He, gave to Moses was given to him from white fire inscribed by black fire. It was fire mixed with fire, hewn from fire, and given by fire, as it is written, from my right a fiery law to them. Remember, the ESV interprets that, and we'll back up now, and you'll see it's the same verse, but the English gives it a different meaning. Okay? Remember, here's what the ESV says. At his right hand there was flashing light. Okay? That's not what the rabbis say. At his right hand was a fiery law. Okay? The Torah preceded the beginning of the world. Why? Because the white alphabet is the alphabet of nothing. So it had to be before there was something. Right? And think about how cool this is. Right? Moses' face was radiant because as he was writing the black fire on white fire, he wiped his pen across his head, which means that he wiped nothing across his head, and it was so radiant, the emptiness was so radiant, that's why his face shone. The rabbis are being very creative, right? This seminal idea was expanded by others. In the 19th century, Baruch Epstein said, the tablets were from white fire from the holy source under the throne of God. The contemporary rabbi held that one Hebrew letter in the Torah existed for each of the 600,000 Israelites. But the problem is that there are only 304,805 letters. So where are the rest of the letters? The white alphabet, right? There still is a letter for every Israelite, but almost half of them are white letters that you can't see. All right? So, in regard to Torah, Torah becomes an imaginative symbol surrounded by esoteric expansions. This is a beautiful thing, because Torah is no longer a list of rules and instructions. Now it's a gateway into the presence of God that's scattered all over the text in various places and surrounds every part of every text so that you can feel how God's presence shows up every time you read a letter and every time you come to a space. Okay? An introduction to wonder. But what if it's just a way to introduce what is beyond our rational explanation? What if the way that God constructed the Tanakh is an attempt to get us to think outside of our need to be rational, right? What if white fire is a heuristic device? That means it's a tool, right, to push us toward contemplation of the divine. What if when you read your Bible, instead of reading the English printed text, you read the Torah scroll and every single letter told you that God was surrounding this, right? Wouldn't that change the way that you think about this Torah scroll? I mean, you go through the ceremony of the Torah scroll, but imagine the fact that the Torah scroll exists because God's presence is built around every single letter, right? I mean, that's cool. It's cool. So I want you to think now, how would that change the way you read the Bible? How would it change the way you understand what God is doing in Torah? Right? It's not just here's the rules for obeying me. Those are important, of course. But the reason that they're there is because he's surrounded every single one of them with his own presence. And occasionally, he gives you a reason to stop and think about it. Okay, so nice little, yes?
Do you think it has anything to do with order and chaos, or the opposite?
Oh, I think it has a lot to do with that. And it has a lot to do with how many times God talks about his presence in silence, right? Let all creation be silent before him. What is that about? Discovering God where there isn't any sound, right? But listen, our world is filled with reading, hearing, and now what did it say? Let all creation be silent before him. Let the sound stop so that you can feel the presence of him, right? Yes, sir.
I read a book many years ago. It was very beneficial. It was by Andrew Murray called Waiting on God. He was silent before him. Of course, you know the scripture is be still and know that I am God. And I found that to be so, it gave me a unique perspective, plus the fact that I had a unique experience from that happening.
Yeah, and the verse is a really good one. Be still and I know that I'm God. Oh, what does that mean? Follow all the Torah commandments, do what you're supposed to do, do your little worship practice, your prayers, and no, it says be still, empty, stop.
And no is yada, right?
I'm sorry, what?
No is yada, right? Experiential.
Yada, right. But, I mean, it covers, it's a Hebrew umbrella word, right? So it covers all kinds of things, right? But at least part of it is the experiential piece of feeling the presence of somebody in a room that you haven't seen, right? I mean, imagine if you could pick up your Bible and open to a page and feel God in the page. Not read about it, but feel it, right? One of the things, remember we talked about how over the last 5 days, we've talked about how important it is to recognize that a biblical text is primarily poetry, right? We translate it as narrative and all kinds of stuff, but biblical poetry, of course, isn't like our poetry. It's not rhyming poetry. It's parallelism and chiastic development and all kind of stuff, right? But the idea is that God is communicating in poetry because poetry is elastic language, right? Poetry, and a really good poet takes words and bends them so that there's this great expression. I'm trying to remember who said it. He's talking about the Caribbean, and he's talking about a house rinsed in sunlight. I love that because he forces me to reconsider what that imagery is like. I don't think about rinsing in sunlight until he makes me think, oh yeah, that's exactly right. Okay? So a good poet bends words. Okay? Now, that's of course what God is doing all the time. He's trying to bend your mind with Hebrew words surrounded by his presence so that you will feel him in those words. And of course, you can't rationally talk about feeling God. It's experiential stuff. So he has to communicate in the white alphabet that you can't even read. Right? It's so cool. So you better get a printed copy of the Hebrew Bible that actually reflects the scroll, that has the spaces. There are a few of those. Yeah, does it have the spaces in there? Okay, good. Because sometimes, and certainly English Bibles don't do that at all. They don't leave any space in there because the printers are interested in maximizing the number of lines on the page. Okay? So you have to move in the direction of a Bible that actually provides you a way to feel God in it. Okay? What do you think? All that stuff we've been talking about, isn't it cool that it works its way down to these little interesting little odd things that happen in the Hebrew text that make you realize it's a lot more than just a book? Yep. Yes, sir.
But the time, about 8 years ago, where I was waiting on God for about an hour. I did it each week. And during that time, one particular time, the Lord spoke and said, you were going to have a question for 7 years. Well, I knew two things from that. First of all, I was going to live 7 years. And then he's going to give me the answer to what my question was. I didn't know what the question was at the time, though. But it was a unique situation. And so I've had a number of times when something unique like that happened.
Yeah.
Just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
I'll make one comment on your comment then. It seems to me that the most important thing about us understanding Torah is to know what the questions are, not the answers. Right? In the Western world, we're all about the answers. Just tell me what the answer is. But God is all about understanding the questions. What are the questions? If I don't have the question, no answer will make any difference. I need to know what the questions are. And you will notice that Yeshua rarely gives anybody an answer to a question that they actually asked. He gives them another question. Right? They'll come and say, well, what about this, Rabbi? And he's talking about something completely different. Right? Okay? Yeah, the interesting thing about rabbinic education, if you're a student of a rabbi, a disciple, right? The rabbi will almost always answer a question with another question, because the whole point is to learn how to question, not to learn how to find answers. Right? And now you have an even more interesting approach, because you can run across white spaces where God is trying to prompt you to feel something, and you have to slow down enough to do that. Yes, sir?
I like Jewish humor.
You like what?
I like humor. Like Moen. It's an Avy. Just close the window. It's cold outside. Close the window. It's going to be warm outside.
Yeah, it's... I think we have to have a really different... my argument this whole week has been we have to have a different approach to understanding the biblical text. That we have to move away from a Western, rational, structured, systematic, theological perspective of the text, where the verses just become fodder for proof texts, and move toward this esoteric, feeling, kind of experiential view of the text, where we hear what those people are saying because it is something that I can listen to in myself. Okay? Yes?
Well, it's like if you've ever been to the hotel and you walk up and you're praying and your other people are praying, you may not be reading anything, but you can feel a definite presence around you as you approach.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I went to the hotel, I just started crying. I didn't know why. It wasn't like there was some sad thing happening in my life, but when I walked up to the wall, I just burst into tears. Right? That's white space. That's important parts of our spiritual development is white space. If we ignore the white space, we're going to miss most. Look, think about this. How much white space is there in a Torah compared to the black space? A lot more. So let's make sure that we pay attention to where the emphasis is. It's in the white space. Yes, dear.
So creating order out of chaos
Is creating order out of chaos is Western rational journey. Is there
Not
a
necessarily.
different
It's one of the
way?
things that
God does. So it's obviously a Semitic idea as well.
How does that work?
God brings order to chaos, right? And the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the face of the deep. So he's bringing order to chaos, which is one of the things that you should be doing, bringing order to chaos. But not any kind of order that reflects him. Okay? So it's not a bad Western idea. The bad Western idea is to bring order that reflects me. Right? Because I'm an order-making being. That's the way I was created, in the image of God. That means I am able to create order. What kind of order I create will depend on whether I'm serving the Yitzhak HaRa or the Yitzhak HaTov. If I'm serving myself, I will create an order that serves me. And we see that all the time, right? Homo sapiens are capable of creating order that serves them. But from God's perspective, I'm in his image when I'm creating order that serves him. Same function, different purpose. Remember, Tselem and Demut. I need both. I need the action and the purpose. Right.
So it kind of feels to me like
Yeah, but think about the addiction to control, right? I mean, think about how unsettling it is when we feel like we're not in control, right? Do you suppose that the Israelites in the wilderness felt like they were in control? Do you suppose that it was intentional that they should feel not in control? Yeah, I think so. Because obviously you can't learn reliance and dependability if you don't need to rely and depend on somebody else. If you're in charge, if you can control your own destiny, then what do you need God for? Right? No, he forces you to, he forces you into the wilderness so that you will learn that you don't actually control things. It's a tough lesson.
We're still learning it.
Yeah, well, the wilderness lasts a lifetime. I mean, think about it. The people that were in the wilderness lasted a lifetime. Yeah. You're not getting out anytime soon. Okay, what else? Anything else? Because otherwise I'm going to say thank you very much. I really appreciate this, and I hope you had a little bit of fun this afternoon, and that you think about the difference between theology and exegesis today. Okay. Yes, sir.
Two things. I was thinking, waiting on God and everything. First time I started practicing that, I had a little place out in my garage where I set up, study and to pray and everything like that. We had one door on the side with one little window in it. And so I was there about 6 o'clock in the morning. It was dark as pitch. And so I had my hands over my face like this for about 15, 30 minutes. And for some reason, I let my hands pull down. What had happened, daylight had occurred. The sun run in through that window, hit me across the face, and I memorized, and I'd never memorized this, it just came. You're the light of the world, a city set up on a hill cannot be hid. It was just that quick. And I said, what an experience. That was the first experience I had of waiting on God. But there were many of them that were really a blessing to me.
Okay, so I think everybody's journey is different, and everybody is prepared for different kind of experiences, and God is quite able to handle a lot of different ways. And let me think, 345,600,000 ways of interpreting Torah. So I'm glad that we now know that you're one of the 345,600,000 that God had in mind, right? It's great. I mean, think about how much freedom that has, right? You're not stuck with a system that you have to endorse, a statement of beliefs, a creed. Heschel says that Christianity is a creedal religion. It's I believe in God the Father Almighty and His Son Jesus Christ, and all that. I mean, it's creed. It's conformity. Now, what does God say? Go find me in the white space. It's wide open. Yes.
So, almost like in Acts 2, when they're sitting there and they're waiting for something to happen. And God says, just sit here and wait for me to show up, and then you'll see what I'm going to do next.
Yeah, nice thing about God is he never plays his cards in advance, right? Just sit, wait. Look, what did we say yesterday? Stop, listen, look. And if you can learn how to do that, then you might see the next card. Yeah.
You were talking about time you first considered something like that. When I was a kid, my brother was in the ministry within 50 years. But he was sitting out in the car being away from us kids before. And he had the Bible on his lap. And I would walk by there and I looked in, tears streaming down his face. I knew he was in the presence of God. It was a new situation.
Yep. And sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes we work on the black fire for all of our lives, right? And we miss the fact that there's other stuff going on there that we just need to stop thinking and feel. All right, I'm going to pack up and head for Claremont, Florida.
Thank you.
Thank you.